So when you hear the words the Catholic Church, what comes to mind? I mean, it's this massive thing, right? 2,000 years of history, billions of people, all this art and doctrine. It's kind of hard to get your head around. So in this explainer, we're going to try to do just that by looking at the church not as one single thing, but through four really distinct pictures. So which is it? Is it this perfect divine institution with a direct line to God? Or is it a deeply human tradition shaped by centuries and centuries of culture and thinking? Or maybe, is it a community that's right in the middle of dealing with some really big modern challenges? Well, the answer, as you're about to see, is probably all of the above. Okay, so let's jump into our first picture. This is the official plan, you could say, the blueprint. This is what the church actually teaches about itself, about the world. It's the foundational document that lays out the entire structure of what Catholics believe. And that blueprint has a name, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. The best way to think about it is like the ultimate owner's manual. And it's not just a big book of rules, it's designed to be a systematic presentation of the faith. So if you want to find the official Catholic position on pretty much anything, from the nature of God to social justice, this is where you go first. And what's really interesting is where this whole blueprint starts. It doesn't begin with a law or a bunch of prohibitions. It starts with something we all feel: desire. This quote frames the entire faith as a response to this deep human longing for meaning, a longing that, according to the church, can only truly be fulfilled by God. All right, so we've got the blueprint. But, a blueprint is just lines on a page, right? It's not the actual building. So for our second picture, let's see how that blueprint gets built into a living, breathing portrait of faith. How do people actually put these ideas into practice? For that, the church points to the lives of the saints. And this is where we see that huge shift from theory to reality. The saints are held up as these incredible examples of the blueprint being brought to life. They're the ones who took that systematic faith and really turned it into a lived reality, and often in some pretty heroic and dramatic ways. And just look at how different these portraits are. You've got a powerful statesman like Thomas More, who literally chose execution over compromising his beliefs. Then there's Kateri Tekakwitha, a young Mohawk woman who embraced a new faith against incredible pressure. You have a humble village priest, John Vianney, and a world-famous mystic, Padre Pio. They were all following the same blueprint, but their portraits couldn't be more unique. This quote from St. Catherine of Siena, it just nails the whole point of this second picture. The goal isn't to just copy what they did. It's about inspiration. The idea is to take that blueprint of faith and live it so authentically, so truly to yourself, that it becomes this powerful, world-changing force. So, we've seen the blueprint of belief and these amazing portraits of faith in action. Now let's look at our third picture, the intellectual framework. This is kind of like the mind of the church, the long tradition of reasoning and debate that's behind all of its moral teachings. Now, it's really easy to think of Catholic morality as just this static list of do's and don'ts. But the truth is, it's way more dynamic than that. It's actually a field of study where for centuries, theologians have argued and debated about how to apply these core principles to all the messy situations of real human life. There's a whole process for how the church thinks. And get this, even within that way of thinking, there are different camps. For example, a Thomistic approach looks at the big picture. Is this action consistent with reason, with justice, with love? But you could contrast that with a Manualist approach, which is much more focused on the nitty-gritty. What exactly counts as a sin, and how serious is it? Neither is necessarily right or wrong. They're just different ways the mind of the church has worked to understand morality. And that brings us to our fourth and final picture. This is the church right now, a community in conversation, or sometimes in debate, with itself and with the modern world. This is where the blueprint, the portraits, and the intellectual mind all smash into the messy, complicated reality of the 21st century. And you're hearing these voices from absolutely everywhere. Here, Mary Wahome, a young Catholic in Kenya, is pointing to a really practical challenge: financial transparency. This isn't some deep theological argument, it's a fundamental question of trust that impacts the daily life of the church for millions of people. Then you have Collins Ngoma, also from Kenya, who's pointing to another huge challenge: inclusivity. As the church talks more and more about listening, many people, like those in the LGBTQ+ community, feel like their voices still aren't being genuinely heard. It raises that core question: who really belongs, and who gets a seat at the table? And then there's the structure itself. Alois Nakhundi really hits on this feeling of frustration with the top-down model, where ordinary members feel like they're just supposed to follow orders without question. This tension between authority and participation is a huge theme in the church today. So when you step back and look at this fourth picture, the church in dialogue today, you see these big themes popping up again and again. You have calls for more transparency, a real push for deeper inclusivity, a re-examination of that top-down hierarchy, and of course, ongoing critical questions about the role of women. So, after looking at these four very different pictures of the very same thing, where does that leave us? How do we put all these pieces together to even begin to understand what the path forward looks like? Okay, so here's the big takeaway, the thing to really remember. You simply can't understand the Catholic Church by looking at just one of these pictures. They're all happening at once. You have the official blueprint, you have the inspiration of the saints, you have the deep intellectual framework, and you have the raw, real-time dialogue of a global community facing today's problems. Altogether, they form one complex, living reality. And that leads us to the final, critical question. The tension is pretty clear. Can that fourth picture, this strong, modern chorus of voices calling for change, can it actually shape the future of an institution that's been defined for so long by the ancient blueprint, the timeless portraits, and the intellectual traditions of the first three? That right there, that's the central drama of the Catholic Church today.